Just wrapping up a snowy workday here at our larger 6-acre site, and before I leave I thought I would take a really quick look at some infrastructure from years past and how it's holding up. I got this woodshed over here, which is a whole other conversation another time, but there's this shed wing that we added off the north side of the garage a couple of years ago that I documented at the time in a number of videos. I'm going to link to those throughout, which has more details on the build. But here we are a few years later. How is this working out? I think pretty nice. Let's take a look. This is a structure that Juan and I built a handful of years ago. I want to say it's roughly 13 feet. This is on the north side, so it's a north pitched shed roof. 13 feet by about 20 some odd, I think 22 or 23 feet long. So not giant, but it tags right up against the north side of the garage. There's no connection internally to the garage, but it's a way to store an overabundance of bulk material in an organized way, clearly sheltered from the elements, because here we are with the snow fallen. But after a few years with some really intense rains and some very serious snow loads, the roof is held up beautifully. Let me take a look at some of the details on how this was built. Very similar to a lot of the other structures that we build. The uprights that hold this all together are made out of black locust. These are trees from a friend's property that were excess for him. Their older trees are starting to lean, so we cut them down and we split those with hand tools and used a draw knife to peel them. These should last pretty solidly for the rest of our life. I've made video about riving, which is the technique of splitting black locust rails, and a nice thing for folks to know about if you're interested. So we hand dug the holes with a post hole digger and set them in, packed them in, and those are the uprights that hold this structure together. And then there's white ash, which are round poles harvested from this landscape. They were dying or dead from emerald ash borer. We peeled the bark off most of them, although I look at it and I see there's still some bark on a few. Doesn't seem to matter. As long as they're solidly dry, they're fine. And so the ash is what rides on top of the locust on these boards here, these main beams. And then the rafters are round pole ash as well. The purlins are made out of black locust that are scrap dimensional lumber from a local lumber mill. And so the upright black locust, which makes the vertical posts that hold the structure, pardon my swirl there, $0 because we harvested those ourselves. Same thing with the white ash, that's a $0 lumber. So the only cost in lumber in this entire structure are in these purlins, which are from a $25 per truckload of waste material. There's probably about $2 in lumber in this entire structure. The roof metal on this we got for free. Well, it was a pretty serious trade. We traded with a roof metal manufacturing company where the owner at the time, really lovely gentleman named Hans, was excited to trade a bunch of leftover roof metal from projects in exchange for a chestnut orchard, which we helped establish there. And so we got a whole bunch of roof metal for $0. They even had some leftover roofing screws that they threw into that. So far we're at $2 for this project between roofing and wood. So truly the only thing that cost any money were the fasteners. And so where the angle bracing connects, these are tech screws. I think we used GRK and timber locks is what these were. And we bought those by the 1,000, which was expensive to get 1,000 of them, but then pretty inexpensive per unit. And everywhere a major beam meets another one, that is the type of screw fastener we use. We pre-drilled through the ash and the locust and then waxed the screw and sent it home with an impact driver. Ash and locust are both really dense woods, a little bit difficult to work with. But there's probably about $30 or $40 worth of timber locks and GRK heavy duty screws in this. I think over time I've come to appreciate the GRK screw a little bit more. It has a wider washer built into it. It drives a little bit more positively with the T30 star. So if you are doing rustic building, this is a really worthwhile screw to look into. We bought a bunch of thousands worth of these screws back early in the pandemic time when inflation was starting to really show itself. We just invested a bunch, so we have enough for a few homes in these sorts of structural members. It's one of the bigger costs in this sort of building that we do since our other costs are so low. And then there's a lot of little simple stuff of countersunk recesses and then T25 screws throughout there. So probably under $50. I forget the original number, but I'm going to guess it's between $50 and $100 in materials to build this 13 by 23 shed roof structure, and I've been really pleased with it. I feel like the way it's built with the locust uprights, the airflow throughout the roofing laid in a relatively flat plane. You can see a little wonkadoo, but not too bad considering its round pole. This should last maybe my whole life. Definitely something Zelda will have to figure out what to do next with, but maybe not until she's my age. And for that kind of price and the aesthetic, I really like it. And it's really strong. Locust is so strong, and ash, when preserved in this way, in the full round, is phenomenally strong. I don't care how much snow we get. I'm just not too worried about any issues here, especially with the angle bracing. And then internally, we've got, it's a very simple thing, but we've got some ash sticking up periodically that creates another shelf system in here, and that does a little bit of load bearing as well. So all in all, I think it's a strong structure and very reasonable for the price. And then what does it actually do for us? So we've got this super stout rack on the outside of here put together that can hold a couple of broad forks. So it holds some of our more serious hand-powered farming tools. And then we have these slotted receiving systems that allow us to hold like tools. So we've got shovels on the left and hay forks on the right, and then the odd long nursery shovel that doesn't fit anywhere else hanging out with the hay forks. But just enough so that there's really good airflow. The sun gets onto them to dry them out, but they're not exposed to rain and snow. So as you see the snow coming down, all that stuff's covered. A lot of value in these tools financially and also for our needs over time. And we could preserve them better by oiling them and all that, but just hanging them off the ground like this respects their needs and has them last at least a lifetime or two. And that vibe continues throughout. So we use scrap lumber. Wherever we were building this out, we had things stick out and we just rounded them over as needed so we can have a space to put some stirrup hose and some old hose. This has a bunch of hooked tools that just carry over on this top rail. You can see random little forks and things. And then we use the same system of screwing in locust staves that penetrate out. We round those over so they don't bop you as hard if you do walk into them. And we can hook and cradle miscellaneous. So post hole drive diggers are supported in that way, and snow shovels and the like. In fact, I should bring one of these over so my mom has it by the house. But right down the line, it holds all these tools in a really simple, easy to access way that also protects them. Almost every one of these tools we found at a yard sale for $1 or $5 or whatever over the years. But even still, I want to preserve them. Plus, Orange Man gets to come out and say hello. Hello, little Orange Man. We don't need it right now, but you can see there's this scrap gutter that's been attached to the end of this. And that's part of what this structure allows us to do, is it holds the space to collect some rainwater for our farming needs. So it runs right down this old dumpstered gutter to this other little section of dumpstered gutter. Same thing over here. Whoop. Gutter from the south side of the garage, and that connects in parallel to these 4 IBC totes that lets us water this young orchard off to the north. So it's protecting the interior of the contents of itself from precipitation, but also collecting it all, redirecting it, and holding it. And so now we have all of these open, so anything that comes in can get shunted further away, keeping the foundation of both the garage and the shed wing nice and healthy. These kind of structures bring me a lot of joy because the embodied energy is really low. Like the roofing materials from a roofing corporation that was getting rid of it anyway, the screws from that, there's leftovers that they had, and we've organized all those by size and color so we can be thoughtful about future roofing projects. And there's scrap lumber up here and trees that were dying anyway. So it really feels nice to be in a structure that's respecting material that was on its way out. And then it holds an immense amount on the interior that is useful for our nursery. So all of these burlap sacks we trade with a local coffee roasting company. That's what handles our bare root trees that we hand off to people or allows us to like move bulk materials. And these are all leaf bags that we've collected this season. We wrap them, we dry them out, we sun cure them in a firewood shed, believe it or not, and then we pack them nice and tight in groups of 25 and tie them with hay bale twine. And so we have about 300 of these cached in here. Juan and I today made this lashing of this heavy duty scrap nylon rope that we had laying around, and that lets us have about 150 of these leaf bags nice and high up out of the way. We'll pull those for insulation and bulk packing material when we ship. And so we use the leaves for our chickens for bedding, and then we use the bags for shipping. And we have a whole bunch of old wool in here as well that we use as insulation for the chicken coop or for shipping as needed. And then beyond that, we've cached some materials, like we're going to build a small cabin at some point in this landscape. And so we have a bunch of used solar panels that we got really inexpensively cached away that will energize that cabin when we need it. And then some of the nicest windows that mainly one found over time are cached in here and really protected and preserved. So we've got them stickered off the ground. You can see some pieces of firewood, and then there's boards underneath. So there's airflow underneath. And even if it takes us a bunch of years to get back around to it, we've got all the windows we need for that structure cached in this space in a safe way. And then there's some fun random stuff, like this random trampoline we found on the side of the road that at some point our daughter Zelda would enjoy bopping on. And probably next summer she'll enjoy this weird little, somewhat sketchy, spring-loaded horse that we don't have the space for in our home right now, but it can definitely live out here. So some things, really organized and particular for the nursery, and some things for fun for later on. Even this random highly insulated solar cooker can just kick it out here out of the way until we need it. Anyway, that's enough about this random shed wing off of our garage. I just feel a lot of excitement about building funky structures out of reclaimed materials, keeping the costs extremely low as inflation just gets more and more punitive to the working class folks or poor class folks. Having access to building with materials that are on your landscape, with barters and trades for some of the ingredients you might need. It's awesome to build out of what's around and to save lots of money so you have it for your family. Anyway, that's my long-winded update tour of this 13 by 21-ish north-facing, gentle sloped shed roof structure that holds lots of farming equipment and lots of materials for our shipping. Let me know what kind of questions or concerns you have. If you see stuff about it that catches your eye as like, whoops, you better think about this or that will happen, I'm down to hear it. And either way, hope this inspires some folks that are also extremely novice builders with limited budgets to get out there and build whatever the heck you want, however the heck you want to. Why not? Thanks for watching.